So a while ago, I decided I wanted to see if I could beat HOI4 without having an army, and I was successful, but it also was one of the most painful videos I've ever had to make. So naturally a year later, I decided to do it again, except much harder. This time I wouldn't have an army, but I also wouldn't have an air force or a navy. These are all quite important in HOI4, if you don't know. To make matters worse for myself, I also decided that I wanted to play as France, which would have to go to war with Germany quite early on in the game, and I'd have no means to defend myself. So I stuck it on Iron Man mode to try and make the game even more difficult for myself, and got right into it. So here are the results. Enjoy. So to start things off, I had to get rid of everything, so I got rid of my army, my navy, and my air force. However, I wasn't able to delete my pride of the fleet, because it costs 100 political power for some reason. So I was going to have to wait, and it hurt a lot as France as well, because I only make zero point 0.2 political power a day. My plan as France was to try and fully invest into my spy agency. By doing this, I'd be able to actually retake my colonies without needing the army. I also decided that I need to invest fully into these colonies because I'd be able to use the civilian factories and the infrastructure from them later on to be able to build stuff instead of having nothing. At this time, I also decided to sell off all my equipment because it would just be stacked in stockpile. Later on in the war though, I'd use my equipment that I've made to give it to the Allies via Lend-Lease because that actually gave me points so I'll be able to take stuff later on. Eventually, by completing a focus, I was able to delete my pride of the fleet, so I didn't have a single ship in my navy. After this, I decided I'd core Algeria, so when I'd capitulate, it'd actually flip to the Germans instead of Vichy France, so the Allies could reconquer it quicker. I also decided to give India its French treaty port back. I also did the same for communist China because to give them naval access and thought it was funny. I also tried to get cores on the rest of the French Empire, but unfortunately everyone said no, which was a problem given the resistance. However, North Africa said yes, so I did get some cores out of it, so it wasn't all in vain. The growing resistance ended up becoming a problem, which resulted in me having to release French Indochina as puppets so they wouldn't break free later on. Eventually, it was time to go to war, and pretty much just as expected, the Germans just walked right through my country. But I did last longer than Poland, so that was something. After capitulating, I decided to rush down the French focus tree so I'd try and liberate my colonies as soon as possible. The Italians were able to get some ground initially, however they ended up losing a lot of territory quickly, and had a good chunk of their army encircled in Ethiopia. Eventually the Japanese demanded Indochina and I declined, so they'd end up joining the war around a year earlier than they usually would. I then got around to finally retaking my former colonies, starting with Madagascar and then moving on to Central Africa. Both of these operations were fortunately successful and it would allow me to start rebuilding. However, the Germans were at war with the Soviets and things weren't looking good, as you can see, as the Germans had swiftly occupied Moscow, which was not ideal. Things would keep looking up for me, however, as the Allies had managed to gain a landing in North Africa. They'd swiftly be able to retake my colonies in the area, which was really good because I had cores on them, so the extra factories helped tremendously. And the Allies had also landed in Sicily, and Rome as well shortly after it. These swift victories ended up resulting in the Italians losing almost all of their territory, and the Allies were able to move swiftly into France. They'd even gotten a landing into the Benelux, which was really good. Things were looking up. My Lend-Lease strategy was starting to come into fruition as well, as I'd stockpiled enough weapons over the course of the war, especially with the added factories, so I'd be able to send them to the UK and the US to get war score. Fuel ended up being quite a good thing for me to sell because I got it so quickly. Eventually, though, the Allies had managed to conquer almost all of France, reclaiming Paris and swiftly retaking all of my country. Things were really looking up. However, as you can see, the Soviets were still on the ropes. They'd lost all of their major cities. However, the Allies had also started to move into the Balkans and the Alps. It felt like the Germans were on the brink of collapse. To quote Hirohito, the fruits of victory are tumbling into our mouths too quickly, and that very much was the case for this. So, what do you think happened? Do you think A, the Soviets capitulated and the Germans sent their entire army over to the west? B, the Allies got bogged down and weren't able to move at all? C, China capitulated and Japan became even more of a threat? Or D, the Allies just pulled out of France for no reason whatsoever? If you guessed D, then you would be correct. The Allies just left France for no reason. As you can see, they just left. There was nothing here. The last defence of France ended up with just there being 2 Dutch divisions protecting my country. 2 Dutch! Like, there were no allied troops whatsoever. They had hundreds of divisions between them, and they weren't able to just hold the front line in France. There was only like 1 to 2 German divisions per tile in France. They could have easily pushed. And if you're wondering where they were just in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I know people are saying, like, go to Dameron, like, the new DLC, that the AI was supposed to be smarter, but this is just not the case. I feel like this has just been an incident where it's been proven that the AI is actually dumber somehow. I don't get how they could just pull out the front line for no reason and just let the troops die in the Indian Ocean for no reason. They were barely pushing in China. They wouldn't actually take out Japan or like Japanese occupied China years after this. It was just so frustrating to have lose my country for no good reason whatsoever. It was just very rage inducing, and I had to rebuild from scratch essentially, which was really annoying because I ended up losing everything just because the AI was incompetent. This ended up becoming a repeat of the last game I did without an army, where essentially I just had to wait for my allies to do something, and they didn't do anything. It was just a slow slog. But the Allies did end up getting a landing in the Benelux, which they were able to push out from, thankfully, into German core territory. I ended up getting an achievement, which is actually quite a nice surprise. But even better was the fact that the Allies were finally about to kill the German Reich, and eventually the Germans collapsed. Thank goodness it was over. That war had been painful, but I decided to take my prize. The Lend-Lease had worked, so I decided to take Somalia. Because why wouldn't anyone want Somalia? The weird twist of events, it was the Soviet Union that ended up invading Japan, but then the USA ended up invading the Soviet-occupied Japan, which is a weird twist of events, mainly due to the fact the US decided it would be fun to declare war on the Soviet Union, because why not? But, more importantly, the Japanese finally capitulated, and the US decided that I was not getting Iwo Jima. I wanted to do a funny reference to a Pokemon game, but I guess the US just weren't having it, so I got nothing from that war. What followed was just me staring at the front lines again, so there was nothing for me to do. I was just waiting for the Allies to kill the Soviets. But eventually they also fell. Thank goodness it was finally over. I decided that I needed a worthy prize. That ended up being this province in Uzbekistan. No correlation at all, I just think it's a good province. I ended up also taking a good chunk of Siberia because why not? I wanted my empire and I'd probably triple the size of it as a result. I also built a lot of rubber refineries into it because, well, it would actually benefited me this game so much because I got so much oil for it for Lend-Lease, which got me the points to take Siberia in the first place. I also got a load of rubber which netted me around 160 civilian factories through trade. Now, if you're thinking of ever doing this, I'm going to give you some words of wisdom. Do not play this. Do not do this challenge. It was painful. It's just a very boring and long challenge, and there's generally just no reason to do it. There's no net gain. It's just essentially a Drew Donnell game. But it's finally over, and I can at least confidently say, do not do this. Oh, so, just wanted to do a quick announcement at the end of the video. I'm currently starting to stream again. Trying to do it once a week, at minimum. Nobody guarantees, so I'm in my last year of school and I've got quite big exams coming up, so if I miss a week, then, you know, it's understandable. I'm doing a series on Pokemon at the moment, trying to do, like, 4 Nuzlockes at once, which is difficult, to say the least. This is going to be my second attempt, because the one I've done is, I think, unwinnable, but hey-ho. It isn't just going to be Pokemon as well, by the way. I wanted to do, like, HOI4 and maybe a few other things. I've done Hitman as well. I'd definitely like to get back on that. As again, no stream schedule though, it's a bit sporadic, so if you subscribe and hit the notification bell, so it'll let you know whenever I start streaming. Again, it should just be once a week generally. I might do more, you never know, but again, notification bell just to let you know whenever I start. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.